What is up, guys? It is Stu, and it is another episode of the What the Fuck Gym Talk podcast. Back on it, I've got my man Stephen Hitt, hailing from Seattle. And if anyone has seen the long form shoot the shit that I did with Stephen when I went out and got to see his corporately owned locations out there in Seattle of Industrious. And then you've been on the podcast prior to talk about Industrious, what it is, how it came about. But I kind of want to pick up from where we left off on there is, when I left Seattle after visiting you, which was just an awesome trip, man. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Franchise, you guys were just in the middle of breaking out into your immediate market that you know very well, which is Seattle. And you had coaches and people in a lot of high interest because that's where your corporately owned stores are. Since then, you guys are now knocking on the door. You've broken out of the Seattle market now, and you've got, some pretty good leads and insights on some other interested parties to take you guys outside of that market into different, completely unknown regions. How does that help you sleep at night?
We'll say in terms of sleep, it's got its ups and its downs. I
Yeah.
think that its downs are that you don't really sleep very much at this point, because there's always just too much work to do, and there's a lot riding on it, for a lot of people. And so you're just always working. And even when you're resting, you feel like you should be working. But what's comforting is Industrious is growing, and its awareness is expanding, and people are getting more and more familiar with the brand and what we do and how we do it, and it's connecting. And when you came out in April, we had 2 franchises sold, both to our former employees. They both are franchise owners now, and since then we've brought on 5 more franchisees. And one of them is out of state. They're in Texas. And ironically enough, the one in Texas was the first one to officially open. They beat our the first one to open in Seattle by about 48 hours to the opening finish
They're a
line.
little less, I feel like in Texas, it's a little more liberal with permitting and things like that, maybe, than it is in Seattle and out west.
Yeah, totally. Well, the funny thing is that they're actually a former, traditional CrossFit gym model operating in about 3,500 square feet. And they switched over to our model, and so they were able to do it pretty quick because it was basically, the gym version of Flip My House or Extreme Home Makeover.
Yeah, which
So,
which is challenging. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of Sean Pastuch's people who are opening up his version, his brick and mortar version. It's not franchise level. It's going to be more license level, but still, they're taking a CrossFit and retrofitting it very similar to what you did, which is nice because you have a blueprint for that. I'd love to dial in on. Whenever I get a chance to talk and work with an emerging franchise, we generally look at there's 3 big problems that an emerging franchise has. Number one, an emerging franchise still generally owns a corporately owned shop, if not a couple. So you still have your own store to keep track of for when shit goes down, just like any gym owner who's listening to this today. Number 2, you are now, as you're emerging, you're really focusing on that brand awareness. And after you get through the first round of however many franchises will be friends and family and former customers, right? Like that first raise, like when someone's trying to raise money, they go to that first ring of friends and family. Now you're getting out to where someone happened to be on LinkedIn, happened to see a video, happened to go to the website and hit you up. And eventually, I also own 3 Froyos or a Massage Envy or whatever it is. And you're like, oh, this guy's an experienced franchisee. Shit, I gotta make sure my thing is buttoned up because I'm still young in this game. So you have this brand awareness going out, and you're dealing with younger, more naive franchisees, first time franchisees, and you might get some in here that's what they do, and they're going to hold you maybe to the same standard that they hold Jersey Mike subs to, because they franchise. So now you're like, oh shit, I got to come correct and make sure this thing can stand up, and it looks, it doesn't look like I put it together overnight kind of scenario. And then the third thing, you got to be picky Because in the beginning, when you start selling that franchise, just like any gym owner, when they first open it up, everyone's money's green. But like protecting the brand and who you allow to carry the flag, it's super enticing to sell a franchise to someone. But you do the due diligence, and you've seen all the stuff going down with Exponential and all that stuff. So it's like you really got to, fuck, I want to grow this thing, but I don't think he or she might be the best fit. And that sometimes can be a hard thing to say no to. Because everyone's looking at you like, okay, Mr. Guy, you said you're going to franchise. Let's see you fucking do it. And you're like, I don't know. I haven't grown any because these last couple ones I didn't think were a good fit. Talk to me. I mean, am I hitting on those pieces? That sound accurate at all?
Yeah. And I think that what's really cool is, we started this process in September of 2021. That's when we decided we are going into franchising, and let's get to work, and let's figure out how to do it. And, here we are, and it's 2024. So we're coming up on the 3-year mark. So we're about 2.5 years into this venture. And we have experience now opening up a new facility with somebody that's on our staff. And we have experience in selling Industrious as a brand, and in selling, franchises. That was all stuff that was uncharted territory for us. We didn't even know what an FDD was when we started the process. And so, we've come a long way in that regard. And you're right. Now, what's starting to occur is that it's becoming known. It's obviously new. It's extremely attractive because it does hit the center of the universe for what a lot of people are looking for in terms of a group fitness, experience, and then also effectiveness of programming and sustainability of being able to go in there every day and work hard. And so it's starting to get people's attention. And now we know we're 2.5 years in. It's like when you take a new big job, right, and you're 2.5 years into the journey, and that's when you can just start to really establish your confidence and feel good about who you are and what your identity is. That's sort of where we're at in the journey. And my hope is that what we're able to do now is because of our experience to this point, is we're able to be ready for the people that we don't know, that maybe a little bit more institutional and experienced franchise operators and have different franchise brands. And our hope is that we've gotten to this point and we're uniquely positioned for that. But the reality is that there's stuff to learn there. And and it's weird, when you've got 10 sold, which is basically where we're at. We have 7 franchisees in. There's 2 more that are coming online in different states. Oregon and Arizona look like they're going to be the next ones to go. And so, we're at 10. But we're still a small company because there's only 10 franchises sold. There's 4 open, 4 locations open, and we've got, the rest of them in development. And so it's, so you've only got so much bandwidth. And, so taking on somebody that is, that we don't really know very well, even if they're super experienced, to your point, we don't have the bandwidth to be like, oh, you're just anybody and you got $35,000, so let's go to work. No way, it's too much work. It's not worth the $35,000. And so it needs to happen, at a tempo that our ecosystem can currently support. And so it's weird. I think that we're sort of in this self-selecting phase. Early on, it's like we just got to get traction, right? Sorry, I dropped something. It's like we just got to get traction. We got to bring people in. Thankfully, most of our early franchisees are current and former employees of Industrious, so they understand us very well, and that's been super helpful. So we could move very quickly there. But people that don't know Industrious, it's not going to be just like, oh, you're on the phone and you want to develop a market. We only know that there's only so many markets that are available, and we got to make sure that we're putting the right operators and the right owners in those markets.
And this is something you and me were discussing prior, and we'll discuss more. But it's also going in and understanding what is market, what's your market cap or on saturating it. You know, you could go with like an Industrious in a Charlotte, North Carolina. You could likely support probably two based on our pod. We have less than 1 million people. And
Mhm.
what we see, especially coast to coast, is in any population, 15% are fitness membership holding. So we have 1 million people, that's 150,000. So you look at 150,000 and you think of all the people who have market share. And I think Industrious, I'm like, okay, I think Charlotte could probably support 2 locations, right? And then, you know, you get maybe 2 in there and you kind of like Metabolic, they just opened their third. They just opened the 3rd location. And I didn't think Charlotte could support a third, and it's doing very well, and it's like, so you know, you kind of look at a market, but you don't want to oversell a market,
Right.
right? And the first franchisee in, let's just say Charlotte, for example, he might want rights to the entire area, which you guys have your protocols for that, what you have to do to secure an entire market, but you don't want to go the way of F45 and oversell a market. But it's crazy because each market, it's not based on population either. It's not just that easy back of the napkin math I just did. 15% of the population, it's so much more than that because every market is a different culture, right? Like every market has different seasonalities, right? You go to Bozeman, Montana, you know, it would be, you'd be looking at that. They'd be tough, to probably get more than one in there because 5, 6 months out of the year, people are outside mountain biking or skiing or doing whatever. They don't want to be in the gym. So
Right.
like, you got to take that into consideration. Has there been any markets that someone suggested to you and you said, no, like based on my research or my gut or this, that, or the other thing, I don't think we should open one there?
Yeah, there's been a couple of leads that have come in that we've talked to that have been in real small towns. And we just said no. You know, Industrious does well, you know, in places where you know, it doesn't have to be a tier 1 market like a Seattle or New York or Chicago or LA or one of those, but it you know, we do well in markets that are exciting markets that people, you know, want to go to. And it's not that we wouldn't open up in a small town somewhere. You know, I come from a small town. I'm a small town boy myself, and I grew up in Springfield, Oregon, and it's you know, so I love them, but you know, there's at this point there's only so much time that we have. The opportunity costs of opening one in a small market are just too high
Yeah.
versus us going to a market that can really, you know, pay dividends and set the franchisee up for more success earlier. And so it is tricky, right? Because you want to say yes, especially to the right people. But there's another part of you that's like, you know, at this point, it's not a good, you know, I'm a big believer in environments in order for sort of the triangle of success to be, you know, to work out, you know, it needs to be a great operator. It needs to be, you know, great customer base, and it needs to be a great environment. And you know, it's not just one or the other. It's that triangle that has to be there. It's sort of the leadership triangle.
Talk to me about another challenge I imagine you're going to be encountering is right now for you to bop around to your different franchisees locally for you. Not too big of a deal. You get in that awesome Sprinter van you have and you go for a drive and, you know, maybe an hour or so at the most. I don't know what the distance is, but okay, now we're talking Texas, potentially Scottsdale, potentially. I mean, you know, I vicariously, you know, through my buddy Brandon Cullen. I mean, the dude's on you know, I thought I had a lot of legs of. I did 30 some flights the one year, and I was like, you know, oh man, look how many I did. That dude's fucking done twice as many because he's constantly flying out, new site, new franchisee, new grand opening, and it's like, whew, you're on the road when you start getting to scale with this. And even if you had just 15 to 20 locations and you're now in multiple different states, it's a lot of management. How do you foresee that in the future? Is that going to be something that you're going to hold? Are you going to put someone who's on the road doing more of the regional level, dropping in at some of these locations? How have you thought about that growth trajectory that you will likely have here in the future?
Yeah. You know, I'm going to do it for the first while, because I want to do it. You know, it is a lot. I can already feel it. You know, I was just in Texas. I flew into Texas late Sunday night. worked my ass off on Monday and Tuesday, went to the airport Tuesday night, got back here on Wednesday, and I was closing this gym on Thursday. In as a matter of fact, I was here by the noon class on Wednesday working it, so you're just, and then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm going to be going. And so, where I'm going to go, it's got to be someplace that's easy to get to. So Dallas is an example. In Seattle, Alaska's based in Seattle, Americans based in Dallas. I can get on a plane on the hour if I want to, and I can get there in 3 or 4 hours. And, so I think that early on, I think that I'm going to be really picky about that market, too, because, I can't spend 12 hours in airports and connections and stuff like that. I got to be able to get on a plane and get there in a few hours, because
so nobody from Atlanta, Georgia apply is essentially what we're saying, right? Yeah.
Need direct flights.
Yeah. Direct flights.
Direct flights. But it is on my mind that, I'm going to need somebody early on to get them going. I like to be there because there's some instincts, and, every place is a little different. And, I'm not a control freak, but I do like to be there in working with the franchisee in learning from them and just doing work with them, being on their floor with them, even during the construction phase, because I've found that it's an unbelievable time to bond with that individual. And, for if anything else, it's more work for me, and it's certainly more work than I should be doing. I'm not a construction worker by trade, but I end up in construction worker clothes a lot. And I know that that's probably not sustainable, but at this stage, I'm able to really, really bond and connect with the people that are carrying the flag, and that's important to me. But I got to bring on help in that regard, and I'll do it when I feel like that person can deliver just like I can.
How much burden do you still have with the corporately owned stores?
I wouldn't say it's much at all. Again, it goes back to, when the leader of the culture is not there, the culture can get passed down, and then, the next leader that comes in behind it, they've got their own ways. And then, what can happen is, over time, the culture on your floors, the gyms that you own, they can change. And, so I like to be on our floors, as much as possible, sort of setting the tone in holding that culture and not letting it get away from us. And, and I found that, even if you've got the best people, that are running your gyms for you, things change if you're not there. So, I think that it's important, for me to be on that floor, a couple of days a week, doing meaningful work, working real shifts, not 5 a.m. to midnight, that's not what I'm talking about, but, being on the floor during your prime time a couple of days a week, whether it's a morning prime time or evening prime time. And that's sort of where I found the balance is, twice a week, get me on that floor, give me the microphone. Let me teach the customers, let me teach the new coach, let me teach the manager, let me teach. And let me bring the energy, that, I love to bring.
And there was a guy in from out of town recently. We went and got dinner, former client, owns a gym, and we were talking about you. And I was like, the one thing I think Steven's got to have, it's very interesting because these handful of franchisees are like really good employees of his. Mm-hmm. He's had to get real good of next man up, because you're essentially gutting your corporate employee staff to create the for these first, tier of franchisees. And right. That is, but, and he made a mention, he's like, man, it sounds like that's tough to constantly find people. I'm like, it is, but when a potential candidate, like an employee, someone who's going to be a coach or an assistant GM or GM, can see that upward trajectory. Oh, I'm getting this position because the GM formally went and opened up their own thing. Do you know how much recruitment equity that gets you in today's fitness marketplace, where it's the biggest issue I have? Like, if I could come up with a headhunting service that was efficient for the fitness industry, it is so hard to find good help out there right now. And a lot
Yeah,
of it's because, and no offense to anyone listening to this, but where the fuck is the future at your gym? I
right,
mean, truly, like, what can you show me an upward trajectory beyond GM?
right,
What does that look like? They're not going to be, you're the owner, right? Where is that upward trajectory? But with Industrious, with this model, look at this. We have proof that you can now become your own business owner in a thing you understand you're an
right.
SME at. And I'm curious as to how that has helped you in recruiting new employees to replace the new
Right.
franchisees.
There is no doubt that it's helped. The amount of when we post that we're hiring, there's too many. There's too many to interview,
So
and
many
they're all
people
good.
fucking hate you. By the way, so many people fucking hate you right now. They just heard that. Like, I know, I can't even tell you the amount of gyms are like, I would just kill for someone that is not completely stupid to just apply for my gig.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's
There
Steven
are too
just
many.
swimming in him. Scrooge McDuck in his pool of resumes.
Yeah. And what's why we played with this stuff intentionally, where we brought in people with very low experience, very, next to no experience. We've brought in people that are from other gyms that have a lot of experience. We've brought in our own members as coaches, sort of
Yeah.
followed that pattern. And we've learned a lot about that. And so now we sort of know exactly what we're looking for in terms of what does that team member look like, and we know what questions to ask them, and we can really hone in on it now. But you're right, when we started franchising and we're losing key players because they're going to be opening up their own gyms, it's like, oh shit, we've got 2 gyms and Industrious has more classes than any gym in the country. Somebody should fact check it, but I'd be willing to bet. And so it's like, how do we cover the schedule? And so it's like, okay, we just got to get so we had a bunch of green coaches on the floor, and that was hard. But the thing about green coaches is that they get good over time. And so, so that's been, awesome. But what makes people work is something to work for. And if that's not in place, you can promise all you want, you can pay all you want, you can beg all you want, but the reality is you're going to lose those people. And fortunately, we've now created this, and this has always been on my mind, because you're always thinking, especially when you expose yourself and you go to 2 locations, because now you can't be 2 places at once. You have to start actively solving for this stuff in your head on, okay, I'm exposed here, and what do we need to create in order for people to stay with our company? You need to create opportunities and opportunities for growth and entrepreneurship, and you need to make it fun, and you need to make it an awesome place to work that lifts people up. And now we have sort of this environment where there's something to work for. And what's even cooler now is because we have so many franchisees now, rather than us posting and hiring people that just want to work for Industrious, we have franchisees that are, when they sign their LOI and they get into lease, the clock is ticking now, and they got to be ready to go in 8 months. Let's say it's 3 months for planning and permitting, loans, stuff like that, 3 months of construction, so we'll call it 6 months, but normally it's 8 to 12. They got to be ready. And so now our new hires are not new hires. Our new hires are actually franchisees that are, current customers that have bought a franchise. And they're coming into it, and now our employees are the franchisees themselves going through training, and they work really, really hard, and they work really, really good, of course, because they're going to own one of these things. And so the quality that we're getting on the floor from that is really awesome. And granted, that's temporary and it's pass through, because they're going to leave and they're going to go open up their own. But we have this ecosystem in this healthy flow through. And you bring up a good point, because I believe that organizations in talent, in getting it and keeping it, it is a next guy up situation all the time. And, this stuff is traceable to any successful athletic team, or program that is just a winner and a winner and a winner. People got to compete. It's really important to us is that when you show up for work, you recognize the fact that this isn't just a gym that you work for that's small and not going anywhere. Recognize this is an exciting company that you work for, and you're in the early stages of a very exciting thing. Don't fuck it up, and embrace this. It's special. And so, the ones that are all in on that, those are the people that we want to rally behind, and rally with. And then the ones that aren't all in on that, that's okay too. It's we've got work to do and they've got work to do, and we're okay.
Do you guys have a period of time from the time the franchise agreement is signed to when you want them either with a lease in hand or with a grand opening? Is there like a window of time you're putting on so you don't get someone who gets a franchise, pays for the franchise, and then sits for too long?
Yeah. So, initially it was 12 months. You got 12 months to open.
Okay.
I know that that's just too aggressive. It's not
Are you
feasible.
talking to grand opening?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. From like signing the franchise agreement to opening 12 months. I mean, I just know that in 12 months, we're going to have to be doing some sort of renegotiation with the franchisee, and I don't want to do that. So what we're giving them is 24 months to get open. And
Okay.
that's a longer timeline. I don't necessarily like that, but
industry standard, that is extremely generous at industry standard.
It is. And now we're probably going to have to shrink that and shrink that and shrink that, sort of each year, just like we're going to have to raise our prices each year. But the reason that we're doing it right now is I don't want to put anybody against a gun or a smoking gun and say, you got to sign a lease and get open if it's not the right one. And we need them to get open. They have to get open. But I don't want them to move so quickly that they start making bad decisions.
Correct.
And because I want them to feel good, and I want them to be set up for success, and I want everybody to win.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of like putting the timeline on the grand opening is tough because there's so much of the construction element that's out of the realm, and then maybe it's even like you just move the field goal post to, okay, we're going to give you a tighter window when it's for having a lease signed, because
Right.
that you're not, again, you can't make a building appear, right? I have to tell that to clients all the time. Like, I can't make property show up that's not here. But at least then again, it does keep people to a schedule. And also too, as you guys continue doing this, every rep you get, you'll get faster and more efficient. And the way you do it will just get refined and refined and refined. And then you'll hit like an optimal, nice, let's not call it fast because fast gets sloppy, but smooth, right? A nice, like crisp kind of pace to the whole thing. Hit me with an emerging franchise. What are some of the things that, what was harder than you thought it would be? And what was easier than you thought it would be?
Oh boy. I'd say what was harder than I thought it would be was getting the first franchise open. It's I thought that, because I've got reps, I've opened up 2 gyms myself. I know what it's like. I know what construction's like. I know what leasing is like. I know what financing is like. I know what installation is like. I know what pre-sales are like. And so I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be easy. I've got reps, but it was hard. And it was
What
hard.
was like, talk to me, give me deeper. Like, what was harder about this?
Well, I think that it was multi-layered. So the first franchisee was our gym manager in South Lake Union, which is a high-powered gym. And so we had to replace him, and while he was under construction. And then, a big aspect of that construction scope, we decided to take on ourselves. And so I wanted to help him do that. And so, we took on a lot of the painting. We took on a lot of the things that were overages that, as we were starting to rip the building apart and getting into the, all the stuff that's in buildings. We took on a lot of the work just to kind of keep the cost burden down for him. And so that it was a lot of hands-on construction labor. that was hard to manage and deal with, because at the same time we were also selling more franchises. So I was up all the time. It was a lot of work. And that's why I think it was the hardest part, is because it wasn't necessarily the project. The project actually went pretty damn smooth. You know, we got the permit in late July, and they're open now. So that's a 4 or 5 month build. It's not bad. And that
That's
build was
relatively
built,
quick. This
yeah,
also,
it's
this
built,
example, you were very, I mean, this is not something you would be doing with every phrase. So this one, it also had an additional scope on it because you were altruistically assisting this franchisee because of the relationship you had with him, correct?
that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I wouldn't go out and build another building and for somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Okay, so then what's been easier than you thought, where it's like, fuck, this is gonna be tough, and it's like, ah, this part of it's actually been relatively pain-free.
Yeah, just I think the sales process in general. You know, there was a lot to learn, and you know, there was probably sales that could have been made, and franchisees that we could have brought on earlier, but you know, we didn't get those deals done because I think of our inexperience at that time, and that's unfortunate. But you learn from those, and then you get better. And you know, now you know, sort of we understand how to take somebody in and how to vet them out now really efficiently, and work them through the process and the timeline and what it looks like, and create a path for them that's real, and get them on board and get them signed, and off we go. And
What
so
was the
that's
miss for you in the beginning on the sales side? Like what was it? It was like we couldn't provide enough. A lot of times, again, because you're selling them a concept, but besides being there at the flagship, right? You got to create a lot of visualization on that call, right? And kind
right.
of really what like was it that? Was it what were the objections, or what was it exactly about the sales process you guys didn't have dialed in at that point?
Yeah, I think it was just we hadn't sold one yet. And so it was, you know, you don't have that confidence you know, quite yet, you know, because you're trying to sell your brand to somebody that you know, wants to join the team. And when you're trying to do it and you haven't had any experience or any reps, you know, you stumble on what is the best and the most exciting part about running one of these gyms. And you know, it's, again, because you haven't opened up other franchises yet, and you know, you know, it's just harder to you know, sort of convince people that no, we are way better than what you're shopping for. Like, one of the leads that came in was really cool. And he was debating on us or F45. He went with F45 just because of brand recognition. I'm sad that he did that. I think he made a terrible
I think
mistake.
you made a horrible fucking mistake.
But but you know, I understand why he did it. You know, I probably could have articulated our brand first. And you know, you're just learning, right? You're so good at selling memberships at that point to your gym. But then selling your brand, selling your operation, selling your business, you know, you need to get reps at that, just like anything.
How has the real estate side for you guys been? I mean, again, you got the advantage of knowing the market of Seattle and Washington and there and Bellevue and all that. How was that? Was that easier? And then as you again, I know your Texas one, obviously you didn't have to worry about real estate, right?
Yeah.
Corey Dean, right? Down there, he had his building already ready to go.
Yep.
Talk to me on that side, because that's a tough thing, especially, and we were talking about this offline, like when you really do get specific, like, I know where I want to be, I know what I need to be in. I know the more specific I get, the higher likelihood you have success, but you are also taking more things off the board, right? Off, you know, to look to jump into, which is a good thing in my opinion. I'd rather have a really lean, you know, these are the prospective sites that are on market right now versus here's a bunch of them and let's see if we can make it work. And that, can we make it work? Like the second I hear that, can I make it work? I'm always like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. This is
Right.
too much money and too big of a risk of someone's livelihood to be like, yeah, that's not exactly what I think would work, but it's kind, I don't know. It's kind of what's available. We want to get going faster. So let's go for that.
Yeah, no, you are so right. Real estate is the linchpin of this entire thing. And the moment you get into real estate, that's where the waters get real murky. because everything ties back to it. Generally, people are going to be, pulling out an SBA loan to open up one of our gyms, unless they're super experienced and they have super deep pockets. Then it's going to tie back to the loan. And what ties back to the loan? The lease ties back to the loan. The loan's not going to fund unless the lease covers the length of the loan, right? Oftentimes there's use of funds for construction purposes. So now the construction scope needs to be there. So, you need architects to draw these things and contractors to bid these things. And the moment you get into real estate, that's where things get really, really just tricky and murky. And so real estate is hard. And even when they're available, it's hard because of the, of how everything is tied to the real estate, your floor plan, everything. And so, and the location, and making sure that you're going to crush it in pre-sales, and making sure that, you're going to be sustainable. You're always going to have enough people walking through the front door. Like, it's tricky. And so, so real estate is the linchpin in the whole thing. And what we found is once people get signed on with us, it takes time, it takes time, and they just need to work through a couple of, and just like I was describing, we lost sales early on because we didn't have experience. Franchisees, sometimes they just got to, make a couple of mistakes and lose a couple of deals, so that way they can just learn the process, and then hopefully land on the one that is just right for them and the landlord. Because I view the real estate, it's got to work both ways. It's got to be great for us, and it's got to be great for the landlord.
It does. And it's, it's hard. This is, one of my biggest gripes with the commercial real estate broker industry is that we got it on the gym real estate side. Recently got a client, and he had a broker who was aggressively pushing him to go for this site. Mainly is the guy, it was a bigger commission check for the broker. It was not, it was clearly not a good site. Like, when you really broke it down by the numbers, or even the location and the demographic and the site suitability, even the op cap, it didn't make any sense. But this broker, he's got, he's kind of pressuring this. Most of us don't have a ton of experience leasing a building the first time we lease a building. And even the second time you've done it, you've only done it twice now. So It's like, you can find yourself getting manipulated and taken advantage of in these scenarios by the guy who's like, oh, no, listen, I think this spot is definitely going to be better. It's going to be $48 a square foot, but they're giving you $50,000 of TI. And I'm like, that's going to cover the bathrooms and the ADA water fountain. And that's it. Like, that's not worth us fucking ourselves on a 10-year lease term for this deal. This guy's just trying to get paid. A question on the real estate side, for your guys, when you had something like, I love that Salt Lake location, that old, it was a tire store, right?
Yeah, the South Lake Union location.
Yeah, I love that when you're in there, because it was there, and then you could see, you'd see the other tire store, you'd tell what it was, and it's it just such a great repurposed building. Are you guys getting more narrowed in on what that square rectangle looks like for you?
Yeah, totally. Well, what's really cool in Seattle, and because all markets are different, is, because of our use, we're a gym. So normally that's assembly class, right?
Yes.
And so you trigger things when you go after these old relic buildings, like substantial alterations and seismic, we're in the Northwest, and fire sprinklers, and, you trigger these things. If you go over 50 occupant load, then you're going to trigger big stuff in big buildings, and you're going to be rebuilding the thing. And, that's what happened in South Lake Union as an example. But because we show halos on the plans, we can stay under a 50 occupant load, at least in the city of Seattle. And that's been huge.
So you're telling me you've been able to get the local municipality to look at your in-place model, understand the occupancy you'll run per, and even though there's a general classification of gym or indoor recreation or fitness or whatever, but because of this, you're able to get kind of a conditional check. Okay, we typically, because of gym, we know what the volume of a health club is, what they're thinking of essentially. That, dude, that's incredible. If I were you, whoever the individuals in those municipalities are, if like getting them to write like a statement as to the justification of why you got that condition, because you're going to need a precedent to take into other municipalities because
Right.
you're likely going to hit something similar.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know, we have the certainly the meeting minutes. And it's so that's super helpful.
That's
Um,
cool.
so yeah, you know, now that we've figured that out, we can go into old relic buildings. Before I would walk in, I'd be like, don't do it. There's no way, because there's if unless the landlord is gonna say, I will deliver this with the C of O, this building to you on this date, and it's going to be A3 occupancy, and you're going to be able to go put in your gear and go, then you cannot, and they're going to pay for it. You cannot do this deal, because you're going to open up Pandora's box. You're going to
Yes.
hit every substantial alteration trigger. And before you even get to the things that actually add value for your customers, like nice bathrooms and showers, you're going to spend $750,000 on stuff that's all behind walls. And so, but now we can get into these old relics, and we can get just our bathroom set in without having to rebuild the entire building. And so it makes it way more feasible, and because there's a lot of old teardowns that are still going to get probably torn down in 10 years, but we'll lease them for 10 years in the process. And hopefully along, you know, along the journey, the franchisee will hopefully be able to just buy the building themselves, which is what I want them to do.
Yeah.
Because they should. I mean, why not? Well, who would pass
Sure.
up that?
If they have the opportunity. Where talk to me again. One of the things you and me talked about when I was out there in Seattle, we talked about, you know, the halo costs equipment wise, you know, something you guys over time are going to work to try to package that up with different outfitters, manufacturers, try to see what you can do to, because that becomes a decent part of it's the beauty of the model, but it's also it's a heavy item on your capex,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
how is that worked as far as that goes? I mean, you guys still pretty much still status quo as where it was. Have you been able to lean out that cost? What does that look like?
It's status quo to how it was. So we're still with Rogue, and we're doing everything through Rogue and Assault
Yeah.
Fitness. But you know, we need to start making moves there, because you know, that's again, if we can get it done, and it's unbelievable, it's important to us that our gear is nice. We want people to look at it and be like, that shit's rad. Like, they've got the best stuff. But you know, if it can be done for 100,000, I want to do it for 100,000. And especially if the stuff could potentially be more durable. You know, so the stuff that's rubber, it lasts for, depending on what it is, you know, it lasts for 3 to 4 years. The stuff that's steel lasts for the duration. And the Concept 2 stuff, just stuff is like the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
It just goes and goes and goes. So do the Assault Runners. And so in terms of you know, who we're sourcing the gear from, it's still coming through Rogue, but we're starting to get Rogue's attention, which is nice.
Yeah.
And
Before they just treated you like any online per buyer, right? There's like a fuck you, whatever. But now you're starting to order packages, big quantities.
yeah,
It's curious. So they to my knowledge, they don't. I don't. Do they do unit based sale? Like if do you have to satisfy a certain amount of annual sales with them to get any kind of discount? I don't know if they do anything like that.
they don't.
Okay.
I think that there's well, and they've probably never worked with a company like Industrious. I think that what they crush it at is, you know, garage gyms. They crush it at you know, CrossFit affiliates. And you know, I think where they really make a ton of money is in like the legit D1, you know, training facilities. Those are probably their big orders. And so, but you know, what's interesting about us is we have the Halo, and we can make the Halo cooler, and we can make the Halo better. And getting somebody, because I've got ideas, right? I want
Yeah.
something that we can do hip extensions with, or GHG sit-ups with, and I want it to attach, and I want it to be here. I want cable stuff here. I want, you know, we can get plexi in these things, and you know, we can still do some inversion stuff that people enjoy, but isn't stupid and crazy and risky, right? Like, we can do really, really cool stuff. And I want customization. And I think that it could be a really fascinating opportunity for an equipment manufacturer out there if they've got the stuff that they could actually deliver on our orders and stand,
Have you seen any of the content I created when Metabolic partnered with BeaverFit to custom create those new racks?
no, oh
When we
yeah, I
get
did. I did. Yeah.
So I got I spoke at the Beaver or at the Metabolic conference again this past year, and BeaverFit spoke there as well. And I got to spend a good amount of time with those guys talking about it. Like those are the guys, they are so willing to get inventive and creative in what they're doing that I mean, with Metabolic, they came up with that concept of the rack, which is now saving the average Metabolic franchisee 500 square feet. And in their 25 to 3,000 square foot model, holy shit, that's a lot. That's a
Significant.
lot.
That is significant.
But like with yours, I was thinking when I was talking with Mike over there at Beerfit, it's like, God, man, for Industrious, if we could have the squat rack, but then built into the side, this dumbbell storage or plate storage, like if you didn't have to worry about the traveling of people going to get their plates and shit
Yeah.
and the dumbbells, you'd chew back a bunch of land, a bunch of square footage.
Yep.
So
And a
yeah,
way cooler experience.
way
So
cooler. I mean, it looks so fucking sexy. I'll show you some pictures here when I get done. But yeah,
yeah.
I'll do an intro with you and Mike and CJ over at Beaverfit. Those guys they think outside the box, and they're military guys. They're like, fuck it, let's try whatever. Like they're very, very cool dudes. That would
That's
be
right.
something interesting to see if you guys are able to come up with something that is proprietary and you again a little bit more unique because every Halo looks like a 169 square foot garage,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you could go and then which looks unique in and of itself with Halo, but transcend that a little bit, like a rig that has an extension out for like the store or whatever however you come up with something. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll definitely talk after this on those guys.
Yeah.
Steve, man, as your friend, I'm super proud of you, man. I've seen the guys that do the franchise thing huge and big, but to see like where you started with it and being able to follow along on the journey and all that, dude, I'm super proud of you. I cannot wait till you have one of these in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Fucking, fucking
Come.
so pumped one day to hopefully see one of these in Charlotte. Where where does the core real quick before I'll let you go. I want to respect your time, but think of the corporate team.
Mhm.
How do you think of the growth of that? Like, how many people are now on the franchise? Do you have anyone who's solely like franchise only, or are they dual role in your corporately owned stores in Seattle and moonlighting with the franchise?
Yep, everybody's dual role right now.
Okay.
We're still a small enough company where it's there. We and we're so fast growing, so we define roles, and then the roles different 5 weeks later. It feels like. So we're in that phase as a business, and I think it's exciting. It's for people that are on our team. Their scope it needs to spill out into our Quip company on stores, but then they need to be supporting franchisees too. And, I think that it's exciting because, we've got team members that are just coaches that are like, I want to help, sell franchises. And then other people are like, I want to help get them open. I want to travel. I want to train the team. I want to do, our virtual learning. So, that everybody's sort of kind of getting their own little pet projects out of this. And it's fun. And I think that, it's really cool for me to see and not interfere with and just sort of let it go. Because I'm learning a lot about our team, and I'm learning about, the work that they're strong at and the work that they don't like doing. And I'm a big believer in allowing people to sort of play to their strengths, and watch the magic that happens when you put them in those positions where they can really leverage the things that they're good at. And I found that when people are playing to their strengths, they can do better work more efficiently, and it's more enjoyable for them, and it's more impactful and cost effective for the business. And so everybody's in this coach the floor, have fun. Like, the fun stuff's all on the floor. Like
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
when we're all doing our projects and shit, and we're, cranking away and getting frustrated and trying to solve problems, we get all that stuff behind us, then we go hit the floor for the afternoon or the evening. And that's when the fun starts. It's just like the parties. It's like a party every night. And we just love it.
For anyone who's listening, if you're a CrossFit gym or a group barbell strength and conditioning gym, I cannot advise you enough to consider checking out an Industrious franchise. And because I'll tell you this, if I'm a CrossFit gym in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'd be fucking nervous if you came and moved in and you were my competition. I believe if someone wants to stay in this barbell group strength and conditioning thing, your model is by far a superior, absolute superior product. I'm talking taxi to Uber, that level of superior product. So from an experience and just the whole thing. So I'm pumped for you, man. I'm excited to see this thing continue to grow.
Thanks, Stu.
Where can, if anyone's going to get in contact with you, where can we send them?
Workhardlivefit.com/franchise.
Bingo.
That's
All righty,
it.
guys. That is it. Steven, as always, bud, always good jamming with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.